So they're cutting out a lot of the vivisection to cut to the chase and do human trials. Because only that way will we get A, it more speedily, and B, something that's ultimately been tested on human cells, and in small doses, ultimately humans. It's a nonsense to continue with vivisection because we are not rats or dogs. We're not even apes or chimpanzees, although we're very close. We're still not those creatures, and we all behave differently metabolically.
And it's probably cheaper, is it, to test on other things rather than animals? You know, you'd think it would be economical, let alone the rest of it.
I don't know about the finances of it. I've often wondered about that. Why do they keep on with vivisection? Do they make money out of it? I presume there are suppliers. There will be money to be made out of the supplying of animals for vivisection. Otherwise, they would have stopped it already. It wouldn't just be out of the kindness of their hearts to human beings that they're doing this. It will be a lucrative business. So I think, as well as it being somehow financial, it's going to be tradition. Because the other thing, as well as being in denial, that is a human trait that we're so adept at, is not getting rid of things because they're tradition. Be it because it's just been done for millennium and we find it difficult to change, or because it is a religious tradition, which you're not allowed to because some sort of sacrament tells you you can't. And I would imagine that with vivisection, it is a tradition that has come up, it has become part of the textbook scientific process, that you have to go through this number of animals to do this sort of test to get your test, and then you go on to the human beings, and then you go on to the blah, blah. And it's just something that they don't wish to change. Like this pandemic must make us change our attitudes towards how we treat animals, so too must they start thinking about the change in laboratories. It's difficult. People don't like change, because when you question people's traditions and their parents' traditions, etc., you're questioning their whole ethic. You're questioning their fundamental raison d'être, really. You know, you'd have a person who said, but well, what has everything been worth then if I've been doing this all my life, and now you're telling me I shouldn't have been, and you're telling me that my parents and grandparents shouldn't have been. It's very difficult for human beings to be brave enough, strong enough, wise enough to accept that they were, if not wholly wrong, then mistaken, misinformed.
I mean, advertising must have a lot to do with things, because you feel safe if you get to hear of a product over and over. It will be your automatic go-to. So,
yes,
and that's a big old business.
Well, the advertising is a big old business, and of course we're in a capitalist society, I suppose, and so it's part of our lives. But there was a news item on television yesterday that I happened to catch of this fellow. I'm afraid I can't remember his name. He was a professor of science, some sort of medical scientific professor, and he's written a book about how none of us should use soap or any other products on our bodies, that our bodies are perfectly capable of self-cleaning, and that although you have to go through a sort of crustacean period to get to where you want to go, that actually our bodies are really adept at keeping clean, I suppose, in the same way as our animals do. Although our animals quite liked having a bath and shaking themselves about and drying themselves off on the sofa. That is all to do with the advertising, because the commercialism involved in products for cleaning. And although I'm not quite sure how I feel about not showering, his little heading underneath his name, this fellow, was hasn't taken a shower for 4 years, and I'm not quite sure that I'd be very keen on being married to him. But the point is, he might have something there. He might have something in terms of, if you've got a skin condition, what do? We go straight to the doctor and the drugs. We go straight to the chemist and all of those things that we've seen advertised, and we pile them on ourselves to get rid of whatever ailment that we've got. Whereas sometimes you get some problem because of an imbalance that you've got for whatever reason, either physical or mental. And if you just rode it through, changing diet, whatever, it could just balance out and sort itself out again. Whereas what we are trained to do is immediately go and ask, what do I have? What do I do? What do I put on? What do I rub onto myself to make myself better? Which of course then can exacerbate the situation.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting. I'm not quite sure I agree with him entirely, but I thought there were some interesting points, and it's all to do with, as you say, advertising. And there are many things like television. You know, people will say, oh, I don't believe the kids should watch television. Well, I've never thought that. I think you just have to be discerning about stuff. To be discerning about what children watch, because there's fantastic stuff. I love watching historical, architectural, art programs. I love it. You don't want to be sitting, you know, watching something lesser than that too much, or your children too. So like with everything, like with the products that you use, the drugs that you take, you just have to be discerning about it
and empower. Not too extreme. And empower yourself, like you said, when you're researching for a role, you're researching and looking and finding out.
One of the things, there's a word that I think is one of the things that I like the least, is dogmatism, and that comes under the heading of blinkeredness. And sometimes, I don't know whether I admire it or loathe it, but the fascinating thing about a person that they can be so sure of their beliefs, so certain that they are right. I've always been amazed by that, because to be that dogmatic about your beliefs, whatever they are, if we're talking about religious or political or whatever, I think to be a human being with all its frailties and the knowledge that it still has to discover, to be so absolute about what you think. I never fail to question myself. And I also never fail to question others and their advice. And I've had many experiences where I wish to God I'd questioned other people's advice more.
Yeah.
And that is what we should be brought up like that, rather than brought up by saying, this is what you must respect. These are the people who are the all-knowing,
powerful.
We have to be taught to be open-minded, taught to question, taught to analyze, taught to have dialogue.
Buddha said, question me if you believe in Buddha. I don't know. Talking of television, which you were a moment ago, I'd love to see you on television again. How's the industry at the moment? The last thing I think I saw you in was in You Being Wonderful in Endeavour.
Yeah, Endeavour was great to do, working with two old mates from the RSC, and it was good fun. I am not doing any more Endeavour. I've finished in that. I was in the last series, and I happen to know that they are doing another series, Series 8, and my understanding is that will be the last series. But that was fun. I have nothing else in the pipeline at all, because we're in shutdown, aren't we? I mean, the total shutdown. And I'm guessing that if you're Meryl Streep, you've probably got a few scripts lined up for when everything goes back to work. But if you're Carol Royle, you're just waiting for shutdown to open up and see what happens next.
How are you coping with your shutdown?
All right. Starting to get to me a little bit now. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. I've got space at home, and I've got a garden. And my heart goes out to those people who, for these last 10 weeks or whatever it's been, have been in a small space with no garden. I mean, I just cannot imagine how difficult that must have been. So in terms of the practicality of the thing, you know, I've been one of the lucky ones. However, I haven't really been using my time very productively. I've got all sorts of things that if I could choose, I would be getting on with. But I'm so OCD, it's my upbringing, you know, about sort of cleaning and getting everything done. That basically that's all I do.
It sounds, it's, well, you sound like the perfect housemate.
I'm like a 50s housewife. That's what I am.
Oh, well,
without the fun.
Thank you so much for talking to me today. And I'll at the end of this interview, I'll put the trailer for Mercy, and it's currently in not in festivals, submitted to festivals, and we're looking for a way to, aren't we, to get it distributed on some platform.
Yeah, the best of luck, all of that. The best of luck.
Thanks. Thank you, Carol. Lots of love.
Great. And lots of love to you. Lovely to talk to you.
Happy cleaning.
God bless. Thank you. I'm back to my Hoover. Bye.
Juliet Galatly, founder and director of Viva, said, 3/4 of the world's new and emerging infectious diseases come from animals, mainly from trading in wildlife or from factory farming.
And it's my fault. I'm responsible. I'm the consumer, paying them to do my dirty work that could endanger us all.
It was a long fight for it to be allowed as evidence.
I work in an abattoir.
It's my first day.
I remember being born. I'm sorry.
The United Nations said a global shift towards a vegan diet is vital to save the world from hunger, fuel poverty, and the worst impacts of climate change.
I remember being born. I do.